Perfect. So to kind of start and give you guys an overview, so this program is put on by HubSpot for startups. There's a lot of different things that we offer as part of this partnership. So we offer one, education and training, so sessions like this, but we have a huge online platform of resources. I'm a former founder myself. It's really great to be able to have some strategy and direction to help you figure out how to grow, or if you're already growing, how to scale. And we also have an integrated platform. So we have a free CRM. There's a sales, marketing, and service hub built on top of that with 500 integrations. So what HubSpot as a software is that we're really like your one-stop shop to be able to launch and grow your business. So anything from your SEO strategy, marketing automation, anything from service tickets, building your website, etc. Think about if you took Marketo, Salesforce, Calendly, MailChimp, Zendesk, and a host of others and roll them into one. That's what we do. And as part of our partnership with GSV Labs, but also some of the other partners that I know are on here, you have access to specialty pricing. So I'll show you at the end how you can apply for that. But you are eligible, some of you for 30%, some of you for 90%, depending on funding, depending on which level of partnership you are a part of. So that's kind of a broad overview. As I will also just kind of let you guys know, I will be checking the chat a bit throughout. So if you have questions, I'll try to answer them throughout. Otherwise, we have a Q&A at the end. I just ask, there's so many recorded webinars online. There's so many different things that you could be doing right now. So if you're logging into this one live, giving an hour of your time, which is wildly valuable, I really appreciate everybody being involved and engaged as we go throughout. So let's talk a little bit about what this session is going to be about. So as an emerging company, there's really nothing that's more important than driving traffic to your website. And the easiest way that you can attract this traffic begins with having a really great understanding of SEO. So in this class, we're going to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of SEO, how search engines work, and we're going to help you choose the right SEO strategy for your business size and for your customer. So then we're going to finish with some strategies on scaling your SEO as a startup and tactics to be able to build authority in search engines. So I know you're not here to hear about me, but just to tell you a little bit about why I'm here to talk to you and why I'm really excited about this is I got my career started in the educational nonprofit industry. So I was essentially launching a different startup in a different location every year. And from there, I moved into working in sales for about 6 years and becoming part of a scale-up organization where I helped take a founder that had been around for 30 years, figure out how to scale their business processes in sales, marketing, and ops to become a multinational organization. And after that, I didn't have enough of the startup bug, so I decided to launch my own business, and I opened 2 brick-and-mortar stores in Boston. And throughout that process, trying to kind of figure out what strategies and tools were going to help my business grow, I kept on Googling for some of these results and strategies, and I ended up finding HubSpot being a great resource so many of these times. So when I sold my business, I went over to HubSpot to be able to work on the startups team, to be able to do really cool things like this, to work with great partners like GSV Labs, but also to be able to deliver educational sessions and office hours to startups that need it. And we talked a little bit already about what the agenda is, so I'm going to kind of breeze through this, and we can go in to start talking about fundamentals. So when we're looking at like fundamental SEO strategy, so this is the way that search engines function, and this can be really broken down into 3 core buckets, which are crawling, indexing, and ranking. So for each of these stages, they can be explained in relation to the process of eventually ranking content. It looks like somebody, by the way, might accidentally be drawing on here. So if you can please remove your marks, I'd appreciate it. So as I said, this process can be kind of eventually broken down into looking at discovery, relevancy, and authority. So most of the articles that you read about SEO, they just focus on this last part, which is ranking. But there's a lot more that goes on before that. And it's really important to understand this, because if you fail in the crawling and indexing part of this, then ranking just isn't possible. So the first stage that we have is discovery of new content. Um, oh, looks like somebody else. You might be trying to take personal notes, but probably not on here. So if this is you, please, please take it off. So anyhow, so the first stage that we have is discovery of new content. So this is discovering your web page. So also, by the way, if somebody is trying to take notes, probably would be helpful for you to know here is I will send the slides around afterwards. So you'll get a copy of the slides, you'll get a copy of the recording of this webinar. So you can be present, take some notes down, but you're going to get kind of everything after this. So Google really needs to be able to figure out whether the content that you have is relevant to what somebody's searching for. So this is part of this, this relevancy phase, the second part. And finally, it needs to be able to figure out if the source that it comes from is going to be evaluated to figure out if it's credible and authoritative. So in technical terms, the technical terms for each one of this discovery, relevancy, and authority are crawling, indexing, and ranking. So this part is important. Hold on to these terms because we're going to come back to that throughout. So one of the easiest ways that I think we can bring this to life is by having the example of a bookstore. So a bookstore is a perfect analogy for a search engine, because everyone that's visiting a bookstore needs to be able to find exactly what they want amongst a wide variety of options in as little time as possible. So this is really just like a search engine. And in the beginning, you don't start with an organized bookstore. What you start with is a pile of books, and they're unorganized. And it's the same with a search engine. They start with a mass of unorganized web pages. So where do we go from here? So once each of the books from this pile has been looked through, they're able to be organized into categories. And this is similar to Google looking through all of the content on each and every web page and determining what it's all about. And finally, once those books have been categorized, they're going to need to be ranked. And they're going to need to be ranked in order of importance and popularity. And to do this, the bookstore staff will look through and figure out how popular and credible the author is, maybe by how many new books they've written that have sold well, how many times the book has been mentioned in the press, and then they choose some books to highlight in their best sellers, in their best reads, their popular category shelves, etc. So the same happens here for Google. So once they've categorized their web pages, they need to be able to rank them. So if someone searches for a page about cat toys, there's hundreds of millions of results that have been crawled, they've been indexed, but how do they decide which one goes to the very top? So similar to the bookstore analogy, Google is going to look at how many other pages have linked and mentioned that web page in question, and how does the rest of the web pages on that domain perform, and how many people have visited that web page that have had a good experience. So these are just some of the many ranking signals that are at play, and they help search engines go from discovering and categorizing to ranking the content itself. So, and a really important part of this is a lot of you have probably, Googled about SEO and tried to figure out, what is some good and bad advice. Let's kind of help to cut through the noise and figure out, a bit about how search engines work. And this is also important because when people see a drop in traffic to their website, they often believe that is authority problem when actually it might be a discovery problem. And then they treat this problem with the wrong solution, which can cause more damage. So in this, let's cut through some of the bad advice, some things that you maybe heard before, and then also think about some of the things that you should be looking out for. So this isn't to pick on anybody, but these are just some of the ones that I've seen pulled up. There's tons of articles out there that apparently tell you all about Google's ranking factors, which isn't entirely accurate because they don't release all of this publicly. There's some things we know, some things we don't know, but nobody has the complete list of these ranking factors. The second thing that you'll see out there is people that have like sneaky ways of improving your rankings. SEO is a process. It's simply not that easy. There's no quick step guide to be able to just launch you into SEO success. And then you'll simply see articles that are just about how to rank number one. It's not that simple. If one article could tell you how to rank number one on Google, everybody would be doing it. So part of the problem with this advice is that it's just not that simple. These articles assume that all websites are the same and all content is the same. They're going to rank the same, but they all miss the important fact that context is everything in SEO. And something that might work for one site might have the opposite effect on another. And it's the same thing with, something that might work for one site in terms of ranking right now might only work for another site or another company later on in their journey when they've developed, more authority or more relevancy around that topic. So the kind of takeaway here is don't read an article and freak out if it doesn't, what they're saying doesn't totally align with what you're doing, and then just scrap your strategy and go on. There are some fundamental right and wrong things that we'll talk about in SEO, but a lot of this is contextual. I'm going to take a minute to jump into the chat here. So we're going to come to some of these questions at the end, but when it comes to like optimizing images on web page, etc. So what I would say, and we're going to talk about some different strategies within this session. There's some basic table stakes that, people, if you Google about SEO, you're going to say like, okay, meta tags are important, your H1 tags, having your descriptions, like all of these things are still important. All of these things are things you need to do to be able to have your on-page SEO rank. However, that's kind of, that's pretty basic these days. You need to be able to kind of go above and beyond that to be able to rank and to compete out there. So we're going to talk about, we have a lot of great resources on that. I'll be able to send you some follow-up on that. But we're also going to look at how should you be thinking about this as, a broader picture. And then we're going to come back to some of these questions about keywords and about images and how to optimize. So let's go back to the bookstore analogy. So a new book that's published by J.K. Rowling is almost certain to go to the top of like the must-read shelf in the bookstore. And that's simply because she is such an authoritative figure in the publishing industry. So if you're a brand new author, you'd have to do something completely spectacular to achieve that same feat. And it's the same when you have a new brand domain. So you might, create a page that focuses on the same topic that Wikipedia does, and you might even do it better. But Wikipedia is, at least out of the gate, is more likely to rank better than you because you don't have authority or relevancy yet. So essentially, you're the new author in this situation. So you have the opportunity that you might rank better from Wikipedia from the get-go, but the same as the new author, it's just unlikely. So this is what a lot of people think that your SEO success is going to look like, that it's just going to be an upwards climb and it's going to have that hockey stick effect. And this is the result of marketing. So all of these case studies where they talk about massive growth, that happens at times, but the reality is that it's more likely to look like this next chart. There's going to be a lot of peaks, there's going to be a lot of valleys, and really patience is the most underrated SEO skill. There's some things that are out of your control. You can't control seasonality. You can't control the current environment that's going on right now. You can't control if, maybe Google shows a featured snippet of, how to do X, and it just takes a bunch of your search results away and ranks, that page or that snippet higher. The most important thing, though, is that with all these peaks and valleys, is that there's a trend up and to the right. You should be climbing and growing with time. So SEO is more about a long-term play that you need to start today to be able to start building on. So let's talk a bit about how startups begin their SEO journey. So this isn't, this chart, it's not isolated to startups, but a lot of advice that's given to early stage companies with new website is just to focus on creating a ton of content. And some of you might have been doing this for like 5 to 6 months and you just see flat traffic and you wonder why you're not seeing results. So the answer that you're told is, well, let me just create, more content. And if you imagine applying the same logic to a different problem, right? Like a paid acquisition campaign for Facebook. So let's say that you spend, 5K in Facebook ads and you see a really poor ROI. You're not going to just say, okay, let me double down and spend 50K next month and keep everything else the same. That's absolutely crazy. So this is still what a lot of companies do with SEO. So we're going to cut through this. And I would also say this is some of my, I hate to use the word hate, but this is my most hated SEO advice. People will say, just create great content and that's the way to rank number one. That's like saying, well, just create a great company, create a great product. And that's just not helpful. Everybody's out there trying to create something great already. So nobody goes out there and says, let me create a bunch of crappy content and see what happens. So I would also say though, that creating great content, much like, on-page SEO, this is table stakes. So you could write a truly fantastic book, but if nobody has the chance to read it, it may as well not exist. So it's the same with the majority of bad SEO advice, and it stems from trying to solve an authority problem with a relevancy solution. So to give you an example, I have a friend that runs, a big content site, and they previously had a really successful section of their website. And overnight, they lost about 60% of their traffic. And they freaked out and they thought, well, this is an authority problem. Let me go back to the press. Let me get backlinks. Let me get mentions. But what it had really happened was that they used a new functionality with React, which is a form of JavaScript, and Google could no longer see what the content was on their page. So the discovery phase of this was broken. And Google was just reading a blank page, so it didn't know how to determine relevancy, and so it wasn't showing up. But if they tried to fix that with an authority solution, it's just not going to help. It's going to throw the wrong resources at the wrong thing. So my point in this is that use context when you're troubleshooting. So when you're having an SEO problem, take the time to troubleshoot, dig into it, see what might be going on, and don't just jump into whatever the internet tells you is a problem. So this is how, the reality is that as a new domain and as a newer company, you need to work on being able to build your authority. And in this case, that means backlinks. And, content is still incredibly important, but without authority, you're like the brand new author here, but you think you're J.K. Rowling. So you need to be able to build a base level of authority, which is a minimum, level of viability to get you to an authoritative point where you can shift your focus to more content because it's going to benefit you more than just starting to put out a ton of content too early. So pushing more content out quicker is not necessarily going to help you rank faster. It may even have the opposite effect. So we're going to talk a little bit about scaling SEO in the beginning. And I'm going to take a pause here. We're going to talk a bit about backlinks, but for those of you who don't know what backlinks are, because this is part of our discussion of strategy. So this is when other pages link back to your page. And it's essentially, it's a popularity ranking. Think about this as if this were a high school, the more people that are talking about you, the more well-known you are, the more popular you are. Same with backlinks. But there's definitely a strategy to be able to get them. So we're going to talk a bit about that. So what is it that you can actually do in the beginning? So we talked a bit about the pitfalls and the fundamentals of how search engines work. And let's talk about what you can go away with as a startup right now with limited resources to get started on SEO. So pause here for a second. This is really important. You want to focus on doing a small number of things really well. And these are the three things that I'd recommend starting with. Um, and I see a couple questions in here, and again, we're going to come to some of these at the end. So I'm seeing some questions about how do you track your progress on HubSpot's dashboard, and how does HubSpot help you with SEO? I'll show you a bit at the end what some of those tools look like, so you can decide whether or not that's a route you want to go down. So absolutely happy to help you with that. So let's talk about where we're going to start with these three things. First, this is kind of in priority level, transactional content. So I'm going to use HubSpot as an example. So there's a number of different types of transactional keyword focused pages on our site, and they cater to the varying intent behind searches. So this is our main CRM page, and this focuses primarily on people that are searching for branded queries like HubSpot CRM. There are loads of companies that are trying to replicate what HubSpot is doing, especially startups in the SaaS marketplace. So we're seen as authority in SEO and in the marketing space, and that's true. And I would say, the majority of our acquisition funnel comes from organic traffic because we do use an inbound marketing method. However, as a caveat, we are also a public company. So we have massive exposure that's given to us on a regular basis. We have a stock exchange, we have Inbound, which is an event with 25,000 people. We have a huge marketing spend, thousands of employees, and we have a very authoritative website. So there's certain structures that you can pull from us, and that's why we're sharing this is what our strategy is and how this has worked. But this doesn't mean that you can necessarily replicate all of this right now. Because as a new company, you're not going to have the authority to be able to rank in the same way that we do. And it might take a while for you to be able to rank this content, but what you need to do is start building out that foundation now and work on it over time, because that's what's going to help you get there. We've been around for 13 years. This has been a journey that we slowly built on. So we have a variety of transactional focused keywords, and these kind of focus on the very intent behind what the searcher has. So these are keywords and terms that are targeted towards a prospect that is ready to make a direct purchase from someone. So this is our main CRM product page. So what I would do is I would start by getting a core set of pages where people can convert and make revenue for your business. All the rest of the content is great. You can build those out, but you need to have pages that are going to help them actually convert into a sale. So this page being focused on branded queries, this is where people, they already know about HubSpot CRM, they're very driven, and they're really geared towards, taking that next step towards the sale. So a different type of transactional content that's one level down is content that's focused on a solution that people are searching for. So they may not know yet that HubSpot has a solution. They may be searching for something like meeting scheduling software. So they know they have a need for the software, but they aren't sure what that solution is. And some of you guys that are in the chat here and you're asking about keywords, this is also part of how you should be thinking about your keywords and phrases. So meeting scheduling software, this is certainly a keyword that we purchase. Same with HubSpot CRM. So to move down another level in your transactional content, this is for more people that are in the consideration process. And we're trying to provide some comparative content here. So we focus on showing, what is the difference between our CRM and one of our competitors. So that way we can capture searches for people who are looking into alternative solutions. And in this way, you can cover all aspects and all bases of your service and product with these different keywords and phrases and focusing on what people are actually searching for. So hopefully you guys are all with me. I'm going to take a pause for a second and jump into the chat. So we have a question here, is what is transactional content? So great question. So transactional content, this is really for so we're going to go into opposing its informational content next. So that will hopefully give you a little bit of context for this, but transactional content is not just, how do I tell you information about my product or information about, my company, but how do I use this to be able to translate this. Sorry, let me turn off my notifications here. How do I use this to be able to get people to convert onto my product? How do I get them to actually be able to make these purchases? So hopefully that is helpful. If that is not enough context, let me know. And are the keywords purchase? So yes, it doesn't mean that so there's different aspects of this strategy. We're not going to go so much into the AdWords side of this. You can manage your AdWords from within HubSpot. But what I would say is it's important to have a great SEO foundation. And when you have a great SEO foundation where you're driving organic traffic, purchasing keywords and AdWords, that's an added bonus. That's the uplift. But if you focus just on how do I buy keywords to get them there, you're going to be reliant on, if you want more customers, you're always going to have to make more spend. And that's simply not sustainable. So you really need to be able to have two different strategies working at once. SEO is an important long game strategy. Start building it, and then you can be working in some of the keyword search. So we're going to talk a bit about, alongside transactional content, you want to be able to build a base of informational content. So this is for people that are a little closer to the beginning of the decision-making process. So transactional content is when they're getting ready to make a transaction with you. Informational content is when they're still trying to gather information about about your product, about your service, about how to solve this problem that they have. And you don't want to oversell here. So that's what your transactional content is for. That's where you sell. Here, it's more important about meeting the needs of the searcher, not just what you want to show them. So this is, very top of the funnel questions when they're not yet ready to buy. So to take a random example of Googling, you might want to, a lot of us are doing our home projects right now. So you might want to Google, how do you build a shed? So let's talk about how some people just get this wrong as a business. So what you're really looking for is that you want informational content, you want instructions in how to build a shed. But what sometimes happens is that you land on a page like this, where it's like, okay, buy the shed now. You are probably going to click away pretty quickly. This isn't what you're looking for. And it's not the intent of your search. So people make the mistake of saying, well, people are coming to our page, so this is a great opportunity. Why don't I sell to them as soon as they get to my page? But it's not the approach that you want to take with informational content. So this is more about cultivating them and nurturing them to get there, because they're not ready to buy yet. So the key to understanding informational content is that this is a journey, and you want to show them, what it is that they want, not just what you want, because Google will also punish you for giving them a bad experience and lower your ranking anyway. So you might get a lot of, views to your site, but if they're all clicking away right away because it's not what they wanted, then it's not going to work out for you in the long run. So for HubSpot, similar to our transactional content, we have differing levels of informational content. So this is an example, as I started with the transactional content, looking at what is the branded piece. This is branded informational content. This is almost like an FAQ. So this is some of the content that we want to build out, and this is more like how-to. And we use this for educating our customers, but also educating internally to be able to give resources on how to do this. And the next level of informational content is more general educational content. So it's still related to our product offering, but very few people are ready to buy a CRM when they're still learning what it is. So this is where we differentiate transactional from informational. And then finally, we have content that solves for an educational need. So you can use this to get people, bought into your brand and funnel people into your product at a later date. So I would say this is the most common type of content that people focus on early on. So if you're building a lot of informational and educational content with the idea that you're going to, generate more traffic to your site over time, that's great. You just want to get your brand out there, that's great. But do think about what your sales setup is here. Don't put all of your resources and calories into putting this out first, because you need to think about, okay, if I lead them to my site, how am I going to nurture them through to that transactional piece and to get them to be able to convert? And do you have the infrastructure that once they're here, they've landed on your page, that you're going to be able to start nurturing them to be able to move them towards an automated sales closing process? So that's not what we're going to cover a whole lot during this session, but having an automated sales process is incredibly important, and understanding what that funnel looks like from beginning to end. We have other education sessions on that. Happy to be able to share more resources later. So in the beginning, you might, if you're brand new, you might want to focus a little bit more on, people that are closest to the buying stage right now. So it all comes down to context and timing. Start somewhere and build it out. So who here has heard of topic clustering? This is something where, this has been a great strategy for HubSpot, and to be able to help us figure out how we can drive more SEO. Drop it in the chat. So this is, as I said, this is a model that we use. And in the beginning of the presentation, we talked about how search engines work, right? So we talked about discovering content is about crawling. And we know that determining relevancy of the content is about indexing. And determining the authority of a content is about ranking. So this strategy here is about building relevancy. So this is going to, take really deep content and every question that people could possibly have about a topic, and internally link it with related content to be able to show how a whole cluster of content is related. And this is going to help you be able to rank better. So what we recognize is that those external backlinks are important. So being linked to from other sites, but internal backlinks are important as well. So if you have, it doesn't mean that you can, get the best SEO rankings just from, linking internally, but this is part of showing Google and search engines how your content is related, what content is the most important, and what pages you want to be able to drive people to. So this is an example of a topic cluster within HubSpot. So we started with something like 14,000 blog posts that were, that were not organized. And what that meant is that our relevancy was split in between all of these, rather than having, clusters where we could say this is what's most important. So if you take this as an example, this is all about, Instagram. So our pillar page, our main page is Instagram marketing, the ultimate guide. So that is, your course, part of content. And then it links out to all of these different pages that go in depth and go into more about each one of these different strategies. And each one of those pages links back to that pillar page. So this shows that this is the most important page. Now, for some of you guys, you might say, yeah, blog content is part of our strategy, but it's not the strategy. It's not the only thing that we're doing. So I would say, to give you an example of a way that somebody else has done this, I love this example because you move past the paid ads. This website ranks #1 above Home Depot, above Amazon, above Walmart. And this is a startup. This isn't a big business. They don't have the ad spend. But what they do have, this is their pillar page. So they thought about, for my persona, what are the questions that they have? So these are long tail keywords that they have purchased to be able to drive here. And from there, what are some of the more specific things? You want to click on this and learn more about orange cones, blue cones, yellow cones. It links out, and each one of those pages links back. So it's not just about having a million blogs. It's also about, how do you just structure your website in general to be able to show what is the most important piece here. So hopefully that's helpful. If you want to learn more, Google HubSpot topic clusters. We have a great little video and article on it. So let's go into tactics and talk about how do we build up your content strategy. And so we talked about, content strategy. What is it that you're going to do to get started? But this is more about your authority strategy. So how do you get mentions and backlinks to be able to build that authority to be able to get to JK Rowling status? So as I said, backlinks matter a lot. So this is the part too that I think people need the most help with, and people don't anticipate what it takes to build a great backlink strategy. You need to have a strategy, because if you don't, you're not going to rank, and it doesn't matter how good your content is. This is fundamental to SEO success. So there's a couple different tactics you can use, right? Community launches are great. So if you're launching a new product, you're in the early stages, definitely take advantage of things like, beta lists, Reddit, product hunt, and you can drive backlinks to be able to get featured. We do this all the time with HubSpot when we're going to launch a new feature. We want to get people ready in advance. And we want to, make sure that they're commenting, that they're engaging. And this isn't necessarily about driving a bunch of traffic to your site, but if you might get a big spike, but it's not necessarily going to be sustaining. But it's a great conversation starter later for when you're talking to the press. Be able to say, hey, we've had so much engagement on Product Hunt, on Reddit, and that is a segue to be able to get you even bigger links. Another strategy that you can use are press requests. So this is a great tactic for link building, especially in early stages. So there are, a lot of people want to know how I can get featured in the press. It's not that easy unless you have something that's, particularly newsworthy. You're probably not going to be on the cover of the Times. But you can have, compelling stories, and with the right connections, be able to be linked. So if you set up a press release or press request, you can, this is when your, reporters are looking for information, people to comment, people to be a specialist on any one of these topics, and they'll put out requests to be able to get people to comment and to add to their stories. So this is great because you can do a journalist a favor, you can get featured, you can get, links to your page, and you can also build those relationships for later on when you are trying to do your own release to be able to get a little quid pro quo. So you can sign up for services like If This Then That. So that's ifttt.com, and be able to set up some alerts for yourself. So if you have any requests that come in from like email that say something like SEO, that it will immediately give you an SMS alert. So that way you're able to respond to this reporter, because it's all about speed of response. So these are a bunch of different services where you can sign up for some of these press requests. And this is a way that you can quickly get some traction. Another strategy here is newsjacking. So this is a lot tougher though. So this is focused on building out content that's designed to get picked up in publications. So this is where you can kind of call on those journalists from the previous slide to be able to get them to pick up your content. So this is about building out a topical story that is timely and it's relevant and it's in demand. And you want to be able to give advance warning to journalists to be able to get this release out. So to give you an example of that, this does not need to be something big and fancy and expensive. So I know somebody who is a divorce attorney. They wanted more traffic to their site. So what they did is that they were looking for things that are trending in popular culture and that were reoccurring in divorce filings. So at this point, this was 2018, Fortnite, which was a game that was really popular at that time, it was cited in over 200 divorce papers. So he wrote a quick post about it, 400 words, shared it with a load of journalists, and it quickly caught on. So you can do this with very simple content to get press pickups and get creative, because this little 400-word piece was featured in BBC, CNBC, courts. It's possible. It's all just about creating and working that strategy. And it also garnered 2,500 backlinks. So this is just, one of the strategies that you can use. But another couple strategies that you can use is Outreach, contact other websites for links, create an amazing piece of content and email them about it, and maybe suggest where on their site they could link to your content. You could also be, a guest post. So are you going to be guest blogger on another related site? So that way you can get published on third-party sites, and usually they'll allow you to make a couple of backlinks to your page from that. You can also do profile links. So many websites, when you set up a profile, you can create a link. Um, these don't always have, high authority. Let's say this is like your Instagram account, and you have, your URL. They're not always high authority, but they're also really easy to do. So there's no reason not to kind of start with that low hanging fruit. Another thing you can look at is do a little competitive analysis. Where are your competitors being backlinked from? Where are you seeing them found? Because these are likely good channels for you as well. So as a summary, these are kind of your three main tasks that you want to focus on right now. So building out transactional content, building out your related informational content, and earning the mentions and backlinks. So this is what you want to be focusing on. So we're going to arrive at a Q&A in just a second here, but I know some of you guys were also asking about, well, what are the tools that will help me to do this? So this is where kind of HubSpot fits in how we help with SEO strategy, and why this is a topic that we talk on in the first place. So we help you, we know that it can be difficult to understand which keywords to prioritize, and how you can get this to drive traffic and conversions. So in our system, you're able to get actual recommendations for how to optimize your site for SEO and rank them in priority order. So you can see which optimizations are going to have the most impact on your performance in your search, and which pages need to be updated and actions need to be taken, so that way you can improve your SEO. As we talked about, your topic clustering strategy, we also have tools within our platform to be able to help you with that. So it's, helping you figure out what are the topics that you should be looking at based on the relevance, based on the competition, based on the popularity of each of these topics. And it will link that to monthly search data. So you can estimate, how ranking for a specific topic is going to translate into actual organic traffic gains, because it's great to rank, but everything needs to convert into a sale, or that's what you need to be focusing on. So this will help you to create those clusters of web pages and blog content around these core topics. This will also help you to focus your search authority on which pages you have that are actually the most influential, to be able to track all of these important topics in one dashboard, so you can see how your traffic is increasing over time. We are not the only platform that will show you how your SEO traffic is increasing, but it is important that you have some way that you are tracking that, so that way you are not just throwing a bunch of effort into something without seeing what the return is. So the other thing you can use HubSpot for is to report on your performance and how you're ranking in search. So you can get detailed reports on HubSpot's SEO tools about what terms and topics people are searching for, where your content ranks in relation to any of these given queries. And you can get data straight from Google that can be used to inform your SEO strategy. So you want to be looking at metrics like total impressions, your average position, your click-through rate, and this is going to tell you where your content lands in terms of Google's overall search results, so you can learn what is working and what isn't. So you want to be able to track, whether it's in our platform or somewhere else, you need to be looking at, what are my actual sources of SEO? Where are they coming from? So you know where you want to devote more of your calories into, and what you don't want to be. The other thing that you can do in here is figure out which channels are not only driving traffic, but also which ones are converting to customers. I know when I started my startup, I had something like 2,000, Facebook followers in a day. That's great. But are they actually converting into leads? Because then you know which direction you should be heading. There's a whole host of tools. I'm not going to go through all of them. As I said, we have sales, marketing, service. These are some of the things that are available within our marketing hub that you're able to use to build on your strategy, as well as some of these pieces as well. You can schedule all your social media posts. You can do your Google AdWords. your calls to action. This is all part of our strategy. So we will send around a recording of this afterwards, link to the slides, link to how to apply, because you want to make sure that you actually apply to the startup program here. So it's hubspot.com/startups. If you're on this webinar, most likely you are belonging to one of our partners. So that way you have access to this. But this is where you get started and can access your specialty pricing. So whirlwind of SEO. I know there's a lot in there. I know that it's a complicated topic. I'm going to turn over to the chat now to be able to answer some of the questions that you have in here. How do you optimize use of the free CRM? So there's a ton of tools online with HubSpot CRM that there's so much in our free. So I understand all of your startups are at different levels. I have startups that sometimes are on our free for 2 years until they're ready to level up. Figure out what's right for you. But it's important to have a way to organize yourself and to be able to track some of these things. One of the questions that you guys had on here is, what are different metrics for evaluating and tracking site health and SEO? So I would say that different companies have different KPIs that they want to track around that. Eventually, you're going to develop your own strategy. But the most important things, I would say these are pretty boilerplate, are organic traffic growth, keyword rankings. So you want to split those into kind of branded and non-branded terms. Conversions from organic traffic. So is this actually converting to customers? What is their average time on your page and bounce rate? Bounce rate meaning how quickly are they navigating away from your page? What are the top landing pages based on organic search results? Which pages are improving the best? The number of index pages that you have, and link growth. So, how are your links performing, and looking at some of your new and your lost links. So that's part of where I would start. So I see some questions too on here about video content. I saw one about images later, like how do you make this visible to web crawlers? Great question. So just so you know, your videos, your images on there are invisible to web crawlers. All they see is text. The way to do that is in your tags and description. So looking at your H1 tags and your descriptions to be able to say, if I had an SEO chart, I would say something like, SEO key performance indicators. Make sure that you're titling these in appropriate ways. I would also say one of the strategies when it comes to video content and visual content is that this is a great way to be able to increase your time on page. So even if it's 2 minutes, right? Google is rewarding for how long people are staying on your site. If they're staying on for 2 minutes to watch a video, that's only showing that your page has more authority, that people are enjoying it. So let me see what else you guys have on here.
Kelsey, another question that came up that I thought was a couple people wanted to know about was about if you have any advice on SEO with two-sided marketplace products.
Well, maybe I haven't seen some of the questions on here. What do you necessarily mean with two-sided marketplace products?
So Sanjay, I don't know if Sanjay is still here, but he mentioned that he is a marketplace for B2B SaaS, and really wanted to understand if there's any other kind of, comments or points that you could do when you're thinking of those two separate types of audience members that you want to come to your website, and how you would kind of juggle.
Got it. Really, really great question. Glad you guys asked it. So one mistake that I see people making, so there's a lot of businesses where you might have a B2B arm and a B2C arm. You don't want to make pages and content that are trying to appeal to both, because then you're going to appeal to neither. And you're going to have a high bounce rate. People are going to navigate away from that. So you almost want to be thinking about this as two kind of separate strategies. You want your web page to have authority overall. You want to make sure that the different informational and content pieces that you have, you're not fracturing out into too many different things, but you want to make sure that they're separate and distinct to speak to each one of those groups. So if I were doing this also goes into your social media strategy as well, by the way. So if it goes into your YouTube videos, your Facebook articles, don't be afraid to make those distinct and specific to each. And if you, I'm digging through some of these other questions in here. Um, so there's another question here that I get frequently, like what things do you want to avoid to not get penalized? So one of the huge things are, there's a lot of different websites out there where they're like, hey, earn backlinks easy, like, get be able to get a bunch of mentions, things like that. Do not go for this. Google is smarter than this. You are not the first one that has tried this strategy. I hate to break it to you, and it will penalize you for it. So your backlinks, and we don't know all the factors in which these are ranked, but it looks at your backlinks in terms of quality as well as quantity. So we don't know all the ways they judge quality, but some of the things we know is that it has to do with the authority of the website that's ranking back to you. It has to do with how relevant it is to what you're actually speaking about. Um, and so you don't want to have backlinks on a bunch of random pages that go into nothing, because it's actually going to end up hurting your strategy more than helping. So I think that kind of speaks to Sophia's question here about link equity. And let's see. So having mobile desktop versions of a site impact SEO in general? Great question, and I think I can probably scratch the surface of this one. It is, first of all, it's wildly important that you have your site optimized for mobile. I'm going to misquote the statistic, but it's something like 70 to 80% of search is happening on mobile. And regardless, if people are going to your site and bouncing away from it quickly, because if I go to a site on mobile that is not optimized, it is so annoying that I might be there for a couple seconds at best and bounce away. That's going to hurt your results. So this is something that within our system, we absolutely help you to be optimized for mobile, but you should be doing this on whatever platform you're on. Does it make sense to block crawlers from certain pages on your site? So yes. So you're going to have your pages indexed. You're going to make a list of which pages you want indexed, but there's some that you don't want indexed and crawled, right? So something like your terms and conditions page, that's probably not, unless you're a lawyer, this isn't a page that you want to be surfaced. So you do want to choose which pages are going to be indexed. Let's see what others are kind of top of word here. Our keywords purchased. So we get a lot of questions about keyword purchasing. Again, like as I said, when I was a startup, I've been through my MBA, I've gotten training, but then all of a sudden you're running your own business. There's people depending on you. You're trying to figure out what are the strategies that you can use and how do you get them in a coherent way? Because I felt like when I was searching for strategies, I had a lot of conflicting information that frankly overwhelmed me, and I didn't have the time to sort through all of this. And I'm not making this as like a plug to HubSpot, but I genuinely believe in the educational resources that we offer and the strategies that we use. We just share our toolkit. So if there's things that you have and questions about how to do this, Google it with like HubSpot AdWords, be able to give you some tips on how to do this. But as I said earlier, AdWords are the icing on your SEO cake. So make sure that you have great SEO to be able to do this. Because one of the other questions you guys have on here, trying to answer as many as I can, is what are the advantages or disadvantages of casting a wide net with keywords? So I would say if you had unlimited funds in your Amazon, absolutely cast a wide net. But most of us are not Amazon. If you are, you've already made it. You shouldn't even be on this webinar. But you want to be able to focus in and spend your funds on what are the keywords that are the most impactful for your audience. And I would say this fits into two buckets, right? It used to be so much about like buying keywords and having really expensive keywords that if you bought that, you were going to rank number one. What I would say is a good strategy for startups is looking at what are some of your long tail keyword variations. So these days, Google search algorithms have been updated because we we search with, my Google home speaker or, on my phone, and I use more conversational phrases like, you know, what is a good CRM versus just Googling CRM. So you may not, if you are a CRM, you may not be able to win against our AdWords spending by buying CRM. But what you could win is if you know your buyer persona really well and you know what types of questions they ask and how they phrase them, you can buy those long tail keyword variations for less and be able to use those to rank higher. So you may not rank high for absolutely everybody, but if you know that buyer persona really well and you pick the right ones, you can get to the top without having a whole lot of spend. But that requires continuously digging into who that buyer persona is.
Awesome, Kelsey. Well, it's 3 o'clock and we want to be conscious of your time. But thank you so much. This was incredibly enlightening. We, learned so much today. I just want to remind everyone, about GSV Labs and our deal with HubSpot. And as Kelsey was saying, we'll make sure that we share all the links and, the recording of this as a follow-up. And, Kelsey, again, this was so useful for everyone. I think everyone got a lot out of it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.